August 6th, 1945, 2:45 in the morning. On Tinian Island, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a B-29 bomber called Enola Gay began to roll. Inside its bomb bay was a 4-ton uranium bomb. They called it Little Boy. The crew of 12 men knew this was a different mission. They just didn't know how it would change the course of human history. 90 minutes later, over 150,000 people would be dead, and a city would be reduced to ashes. The target was Hiroshima, a city of 350,000 people on Japan's main island. Now, here's something most people don't know. Hiroshima had been deliberately spared from earlier bombing raids. Why? So the military could accurately measure the atomic bomb's effects. Think about that for a moment. The city was saved, so it could be destroyed. That's the dark logic of war. As dawn broke over Hiroshima, people went about their morning routines. Many were tasked with demolishing buildings to create fire breaks. They were preparing for conventional bombs. Air raid sirens had gone off earlier, but the all clear had been given. So when one lone B-29 appeared in the sky at 8:15, nobody worried. One plane couldn't do much damage. Right? Wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Little Boy fell from the Enola Gay. For 43 seconds, it dropped through the air. Then, at 1,900 feet above a hospital, it detonated. The blast released the equivalent of 15,000 tons of TNT. In one instant, the fireball reached temperatures hotter than the sun's surface. Everything within a mile simply vanished, vaporized. People closer to ground zero left only shadows on the walls. That's all that remained. Shadows burned into concrete. The thermal radiation moved at the speed of light. It burned people's skin 2 miles away. The shockwave followed, traveling faster than sound, obliterating everything in its path. Buildings collapsed like cards. The mushroom cloud rose 40,000 feet into the air. You could see it for hundreds of miles. The next day, Dr. Yoshio Nishina arrived to investigate. He was one of Japan's top nuclear physicists. What he saw defied description. The city center was gone, just ash and twisted metal, bodies everywhere. Survivors wandered like ghosts, their skin hanging in strips, crying for water. The medical system had collapsed. Of 298 doctors, 270 were dead or injured. 42 out of 45 hospitals were destroyed. Dr. Nishina knew immediately this was an atomic bomb. He reported this to Tokyo. And here's the shocking part. Despite knowing what this weapon could do, Japan's military leadership decided to continue fighting. They believed they could still negotiate better surrender terms. They were wrong. Another bomb was already being prepared. 3 days later, on August 9th, another B-29 took off. This one was called Boxcar. Major Charles Sweeney was in command. The bomb on board was different. They called it Fat Man. It used plutonium instead of uranium, and it was more powerful. 2 other planes were supposed to accompany Boxcar, the Great Artiste and Big Stink. But from the start, everything went wrong. During the pre-flight check, they discovered a problem. The fuel pump wasn't working. 600 gallons of fuel were stuck in the reserve tank, unusable. They had a choice: delay the mission for hours to fix it, or go ahead with a crippled aircraft. They chose to go. That decision would have major consequences. The primary target was Kokura, a city with massive munitions factories. Nagasaki was the backup. Weather reports said both cities had clear skies. At the rendezvous point, the Great Artiste showed up. But Big Stink never arrived. It was flying at the wrong altitude, going off course. The mission plan said to wait 15 minutes maximum. Sweeney waited 40, burning precious fuel the whole time. When they finally headed to Kokura, disaster struck. The weather had changed. Smoke from fires in nearby Yahata drifted over the city. The steelworks there were deliberately burning coal tar, creating thick black smoke. They knew another attack was coming. 70% of Kokura was obscured. The bombardier couldn't see the target. Mission rules were clear. They had to see it visually, no blind drops. For 50 minutes, Boxcar circled Kokura, making 3 bombing runs, fuel burning away. Japanese anti-aircraft guns getting closer with each pass. This is where Kokura luck comes from. The city's cloudy skies saved it from nuclear destruction. But Boxcar was running out of options and fuel. Sweeney made the call. Head to Nagasaki. If they couldn't bomb there either, they'd dump the bomb in the ocean near Okinawa. In Nagasaki that morning, people heard air raid sirens early. But the all clear sounded soon after. Only a couple of B-29s had been spotted. Probably reconnaissance. No big deal. When more planes appeared later, nobody worried. They seemed like scouts. No alarm was raised. At 11 hours, the great artiste dropped some equipment on parachutes. Instruments to measure the blast. One had a letter attached. It was addressed to a Japanese physicist, warning him about these terrible new weapons, begging him to tell the world. 1 minute later, Fat Man fell. Boxcar approached Nagasaki under complete cloud cover. The bombardier was ready to abort. They'd have to ditch the bomb. But then, for just a few seconds, the clouds parted. Just enough. The bombardier locked onto the Urakami Valley. Fat Man dropped. 47 seconds later, it exploded at 1,150 feet. The blast was even more powerful than Hiroshima, 21,000 tons of TNT equivalent. But here's an interesting twist. The bomb missed its target by nearly 2 miles. It exploded over a valley instead of the city center. And Nagasaki's geography saved many lives. The city has hills everywhere. The Urakami Valley acted like a container. The surrounding hills blocked much of the blast. Parts of Nagasaki were shielded. Don't get me wrong, the destruction was still immense. Between 40,000 and 75,000 people died immediately. Tens of thousands more would die later. But it could have been worse. Now, let me tell you about someone extraordinary. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi, and his story is almost unbelievable. Yamaguchi was a 29-year-old engineer. He worked for Mitsubishi in Nagasaki. But in early August 1945, he was on a business trip to Hiroshima, designing oil tankers. August 6th was supposed to be his last day. He was walking to the shipyard that morning, looking forward to going home. Then he heard a plane. He looked up, saw a B-29, saw something drop. The sky exploded. Yamaguchi dove into a ditch. The shockwave hit. He was less than 2 miles from ground zero. The blast picked him up, spun him through the air, threw him into a potato field. His left side was badly burned. His eardrums burst. He was temporarily blind, in excruciating pain. But somehow, he found his 2 colleagues. They'd survived too. They spent that night in a shelter, surrounded by the dying and the dead. The next morning, Yamaguchi got on a train. Can you imagine? Severely burned, in shock, radiation poisoning already setting in. But he made it back to Nagasaki on August 8th. His wife and baby son were there. Despite everything, he went to work on August 9th. He needed to report what happened. His supervisor didn't believe him. "One bomb destroyed a whole city? You're crazy!" While his boss was calling him crazy, the second bomb detonated. Yamaguchi was 2 miles from ground zero. Again. Think about that. 2 atomic bombs, 3 days apart, and he survived both. The office collapsed around him, but he crawled out, found his family. They'd survived too. They hid in a tunnel. But the radiation from both bombs would haunt Yamaguchi forever. His hair fell out. His burns became infected. He vomited constantly. He had a raging fever. For weeks, he thought he would die. But he didn't. Slowly, impossibly, he recovered. He went on to live a relatively normal life. Got married, raised 3 children, worked as a translator and teacher. But the radiation never left him. Deaf in one ear, recurring cataracts, chronic pain. His wife died of cancer in 2008, likely from radiation. Yamaguchi himself died in 2010. Stomach cancer, he was 93. For most of his life, he didn't talk about it. The trauma was too deep. But in his final years, something changed. He saw his survival as destiny. In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized him. The only person confirmed to survive both atomic bombings, though at least 160 others probably did. He spoke at the United Nations in 2006. His message was simple: I hate the atomic bomb because of what it does to human dignity. His story became a warning, a reminder of nuclear weapons' true cost. While Yamaguchi was fighting for his life, Japan's leadership was making a decision. Hours before Fat Man dropped, the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria, crushing Japanese forces, ending any hope for negotiated peace. The military wanted to keep fighting, but after the second atomic bomb, even the hardliners had to face reality. After intense debate, the decision came. Japan would surrender. They would bear the unbearable. On August 15, 1945, the Emperor's voice was broadcast across Japan. For most people, it was the first time they had heard him speak. The war was over. Some soldiers wept. Some committed suicide rather than accept defeat. But most people felt relief. The killing would stop. The formal surrender ceremony happened on September 2nd, aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. World War II was officially over. But not everyone got the message. Let me tell you about Hiro Onoda. In December 1944, this young intelligence officer was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines. His orders were crystal clear: conduct guerrilla warfare, destroy enemy facilities, never surrender, never. Onoda took these orders seriously. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, he didn't believe it. He thought it was propaganda. He and 3 other soldiers retreated into the jungle. For 30 years, they stayed there, living off fruit and coconuts, raiding villages for rice, fighting with local police, convinced the war was still going. One by one, his companions were killed or surrendered. By 1972, Onoda was alone, still fighting, still following his orders. In October 1945, they found leaflets announcing Japan's surrender. They dismissed them as fake. In 1952, letters from their families were dropped from planes with photographs, begging them to come home. Onoda thought they were forgeries. In 1959, someone left in newspapers and magazines in the jungle, current ones. Onoda found them. But the modern world they showed made no sense. It was too different from 1944 Japan. He decided it was psychological warfare. The Japanese government declared him legally dead. Still, he continued, alone in the jungle, following orders that were 30 years old. Then, in February 1974, a young adventurer named Norio Suzuki found him. They talked. Suzuki asked why he wouldn't come out. Onoda's answer was simple. He was waiting for orders from his commanding officer. Suzuki went back to Japan, found Onoda's old commander, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi. He'd become a bookseller. On March 9, 1974, Taniguchi flew to the Philippines, traveled into the jungle, met his former subordinate after 30 years, and finally gave the order. The 14th Area Army has ceased combat. You are relieved of duty. Onoda wept. His war was over. He'd held out for 10,116 days after Japan surrendered. When he emerged from the jungle, he was still wearing his uniform, tattered but intact. He carried his sword, his rifle, 500 rounds of ammunition, hand grenades, and a dagger his mother had given him for suicide if captured. The Philippines pardoned him. Japan welcomed him as a hero. But he struggled with modern life. Eventually moved to Brazil, became a rancher. He died in 2014 at age 91. These two stories show you the war's two faces. Yamaguchi survived the atomic age's worst horrors. His body carried the scars forever, a living testament to nuclear weapons' true effects. Onoda showed something different, the depth of conviction that made the Pacific War so brutal. How hard it was to accept such total commitment ending in defeat. The atomic bombings killed between 150,000 and 246,000 people by the end of 1945. Tens of thousands more died later. From radiation sickness, from cancer. The survivors, called hibakusha, faced terrible discrimination. Many developed cancers that continued appearing for decades. Pregnant women had higher miscarriage rates, more birth defects. The genetic damage may affect their descendants still. These weapons changed everything. They created the nuclear age, the Cold War, the constant threat of annihilation. But here's the thing. Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain the only times nuclear weapons were used in war. They stand as a warning, a reminder of what these weapons really do. Not to military targets, to people, to children, to entire cities. In 1959, something remarkable happened. The pilot of the Enola Gay, Paul Tibbets, met a Japanese officer named Mitsuo Fuchida. Fuchida had led the Pearl Harbor attack. Their conversation was brutally honest. Tibbets mentioned Pearl Harbor's surprise. Fuchida asked what he thought Japan felt about Hiroshima. Then, Fuchida said something unexpected. "You did the right thing. You know how fanatical we were then. We would have died for the Emperor. Every person, with sticks and stones if necessary. The invasion would have been a slaughter. The Japanese people know this better than Americans ever will." This conversation shows the moral complexity. Were the bombings necessary? Would they save more lives by preventing an invasion? Or were they an unnecessary escalation? War crimes targeting civilians? Historians still debate this. There are no simple answers. Just the sobering reality of what happened. And the absolute necessity of making sure it never happens again. Today, memorials stand in both cities. The Hiroshima Peace Memorial, the Atomic Bomb Dome, one of the few structures that partially survived. It's been preserved exactly as it looked after the bombing, a skeleton of twisted metal and broken walls. Every year on the anniversaries, ceremonies honor the dead and call for nuclear disarmament. The hibakusha who remain tell their stories, trying to make sure the world never forgets. Because history isn't just dates and statistics, it's people. Each person who died had a name, a family, dreams, fears. Each survivor carried scars, physical and mental, for their entire lives. The decisions made in August 1945 shaped our world, created the nuclear age we still live in. 8 decades later, we're still grappling with those consequences. The testimonies of survivors remain crucial. The preserved ruins stand as warnings. The documented horrors tell us something vital. Nuclear weapons aren't abstract. They're not just strategic tools. They're instruments of mass human suffering. The fireball, the radiation, The long, painful deaths. The world has been lucky. No nuclear weapon has been used in combat since Nagasaki. That's 79 years of restraint, of fear, of luck. This is the truth about the atomic bombings. Not simple, not comfortable, but necessary. Because the alternative to remembering is forgetting. And forgetting means it could happen again. May these lessons never be forgotten. If this story made you reflect, share it. History is not just something to learn from, but something to remember. And I will keep bringing you unforgettable stories in the next video. I'll see you there.